She said May before.
Really?
Yeah, this person here. I'll say hello to her.
Yeah. It means delicious taste.
Yeah. May tastes nice. I'm sure it's May. May, say hello. Everyone's muted themselves.
Oh, this is May. Yeah. You are a delicious taste.
Hi, May.
Morning, May.
Morning. We like your name. Make that big, and then we go slideshow start. I'm trying to make it so I don't just talk.
May, I've got a haircut.
Oh.
Oops.
Amy's had a haircut.
I've got a haircut
Everyone's gone
inspired by
short like
May. May was real short.
Oh yeah, May's gone
Yes.
short. May and I just went. We went. My friend cut my hair. I think May, she cut her own hair. A friend cut, and then she cut after that. So
Yeah.
I've been doing the same. I've been going just. That's annoying cut. So Danilo, thank you for the uppers. You guys have got an upper group going. Kate and you, a few people going in that, which is good. So I've made a little upper group within the WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And Amy, thank you for uploading all your stuff. That's good.
Thanks. It's okay. I'm happy to.
Yeah, doing a good job. Okay. So what is reading? Well, reading is, Amy, can you read that? An active process of?
Yeah, hang on.
I know, it's always a bit of fiddly thing because I've got little bits in the way as well. I've got to move things around. Each time I try to read something,
yep.
You guys come in the way. Reading is an active...
Sorry, because I can't see the screen right now. I don't know why. I'm only seeing your face.
Sometimes I randomly choose people to read, but if you can't read, that's okay. Can anyone read the top bit? It says an active process of...
Decoding input,
Thank you.
To existing knowledge about the world and about language, hypothesizing and guessing. Also read and understand.
Yeah, so how to read and understand. They'll do. Thank you, Danilo. Thank you. Can I call you Danny? You're Danny, right?
Sure, yeah. Actually, my students are calling me Danny because of you.
Sorry about that.
No, that's good. That's how they used to call me as well.
Oh, that's good. Yeah. I just tend to make names easy to remember. So Danilo, Danny. Okay, good. So how to read and understand? Well, look at the whole text because we need to decode it. We need to break it down into simpler units and put it in context so you can understand where it's come from and understand its purpose, so why people are writing, what it is that we're reading, and understand how the various parts of a text relate to each other. I should not be there. Understand the meaning created when words are combined, decoding symbols and decoding words, and to understand the intended effect or influence they desire to have on the reader, and need to be able to think critically about what is and what isn't being said. So what should we underline here? But what agenda the reader has when they write something. So when we read it, what is the actual purpose of it? So when we read, we have to think about all these things. This is how students read. Anyone got any input? What else? What other difficulties might there be when our students attempt to read something for the first time? Yeah. So what about A, B, C, D? What are these letters called?
Alphabet.
Yeah, the alphabet. And our alphabet derives back from Roman times. So we have all Latin-based languages have the alphabet. Yeah. So if you don't have the ABC, that's something else. So Arabic, Chinese, Korean, Japanese. Yeah.
Arabic alphabet.
Yeah, Arabic. Yes, that's right. Hindi don't have ABC. So those people might have a bit more trouble trying to understand. Good. So this is all straight from your book. And once again, I dictated it. So every now and then there's a few mistakes. So if you've read, is it chapter 7, isn't it? Is reading. So foundational reading skills and conventions. So the relationship between oracy. What does oracy mean?
Oracy.
Yeah, So
ability
speaking
to
words,
speak.
that's right. And literacy
Yeah.
is the...
Actually, literacy is a wide range of concepts in education, but we can understand as the ability to also write and get the knowledge enough or communicate.
Yeah, so the writing and reading, and RSE is the speaking.
Yeah.
So yeah, okay, so relationship between the two. So do you think if you have the ability to speak more, do you think you'll be able to read and write more? Anyone think there's a link here? If you have high speaking skills, usually that replicates in high writing and reading skills, yes? So those that
That
come in
depends
with
on
zero, it's a bit
that
harder.
may depend. That may depend on what you understand as high level of speaking or high level of writing. I mean, because the concept of fluency is just relevant depending on your specific context. If I can go to the shop and have a conversation with the clerk, I am fluent. But still, if I have to teach or talk about, let's say, I don't know, physics, I won't be fluent at all because
Yeah.
it's a field that I don't have any
Yeah,
knowledge
yeah. Good
about.
input. So in whatever particular field we're talking about, so if it's every day talking to the shop owner down the street about the weather, well, yes, we can be considered fluent enough. But then if it's something specific, highly technical, then not. Yeah, that's true. But those who usually can speak, usually the reading and writing comes easier to them. Those who start off with 0, 0. What about those that had in L1 low RSE and literacy, or we'll say low literacy? Do you think it would be a bit more difficult for them to learn to read in their first language? They don't know how to write. I don't mean to be stereotypicalising Africans, but it could be from that particular country. They don't come to Australia with high literacy skills. So would it be harder for them to pick up reading, you think?
Yes.
Yeah, that's right. So knowledge of the Roman script. So if you've got low L1 literacy, or if you've got low RSE, it is harder. So if they've got low L1 or they don't use the Roman script, they need to familiarise themselves with the alphabet. And when language learning researchers, so this is Williams and Roberts, claim that learning process is made easier by focusing initially on developing already speaking and listening before introducing reading and writing. So as a baby growing up, which one comes first, the reading, writing, or the speaking, listening? Is it the RSE or literacy skills come first?
RSE.
Yeah, RSE, right. So that's a natural way to learn. That's how they say the brain develops best. You speak it, then you learn to write it after. If you learn to write at the same time, sometimes you might want to speak it how it's written, which we all know in English isn't always the case. Oh, so as an international student arriving with low RSE and literacy equal, then it's harder for them because they don't have the 5 years to develop their RSE first, as children do naturally. So I need to introduce the written word form with lots of visual representation and use it in a contextualized fashion, whatever's happening in their world. If they're here with children in schools, then we look at things relate to schools, newsletters and things like that, but easier if you can break it down or rewrite it, paraphrase it in easier English. But lots of visual representation. What does that mean if you're teaching with visual representation? What sort of things do you do?
That the person is gonna use, we are gonna use images.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Maybe figures or
visual media.
Yeah, they call it realia. So bring in whatever you can to make it real and topicalize it. So it's more appealing to them, to engage them more. Yep, good. Any questions so far?
I'm good.
Nope, good. So international adult learners do not have the luxury of 5 years of improving their RSE. So real life, we need to teach them real life reading to make it, they're more likely to want to learn it. Coming from a Western education background, our classroom experience is generally one in which there's a rich variety of methods of input are used. So even though they come with equally low levels of RSE and literacy, we have the physical resources such as whiteboards, smartboards, data projectors. All of these are considered standard equipment in classrooms. So we can quickly show an image with our data projector. Smartboard, you could draw it, find it. Whiteboard. Yeah. It is beneficial to present the information in several ways with the usual visual reinforcing. Auditory, what does auditory mean as opposed to oracy? What's auditory?
Listening.
Yeah, that's right. So when you listen, you reinforce it with the visual. That'll help our students. And there's a quote here from, I think it was from the person back here, this guy here, that Richard person back here. Yeah, Williams and Roberts quote from their book, Powerful Visual Communication is Vital. There you go. Everyone agree with that? Yep.
Yep.
Good. So they say that if we learn something with the visual as well as the spoken, we're 6 times likely to remember it. So words with pictures, retention rate is 6 times higher. So this is from your book. Has anyone read chapter 7? It says this in your book. I don't know what page, but somewhere in there. So of the total inventory of knowledge you have in your head, 75% of which you obtain visually, and 13% from hearing, and 12% from smell, taste, touch. Morning, Emma. I just got a message from Emma saying that she's not well. That's okay. Okay. So once again saying we need to have the visual with the oral, the listening, and the writing and reading, the literacy. So if I tell you, so who is Steve Jobs lookalike, and I tell you the answer, see if you remember it, then I'll ask you again later with actually showing the person's picture, okay? So Steve Jobs lookalike, his name is, and no one write it down, his name is Dan Leons, okay? Dan Leons. So we're just going to do a little experiment. I'll go really fast. There you go. So we'll see if you remember it just by me telling you, as opposed to later on I'll show you the picture and see if you think. Well, anyone who comes in new, maybe they might remember it more. So jumping onto the next part, in terms of learning styles, so visual strategies include note-taking, doing writing exercises, mapping information into diagrams. Does everyone know what a Venn diagram is?
Yeah.
So you have that middle
Oh,
section.
yeah, the mathematic one, yeah.
Yeah, so you might have people who like this, people like this, people like both, that sort of thing.
Yep.
You know, a line graph or a bar graph, everyone know those sort of things? Line graph is like that, bar graph is like that. So interpreting results into those sort of things, talking about them. So reading the graphs and then interpreting them. Good practice for IELTS as well. So if you have the visual graphs or charts or Venn diagrams, and then have them write that up, interpreting the results is a good thing. So in terms of teaching, try to reinforce our presentations with a visual representation of the same information, and then involve learners. Okay, yep. So learners with low literacy levels struggle with many of the learning activities typical of an ESL classroom, simply because they do not yet have the necessary literacy skills. Learners of this profile have special needs that require specific attention. According to Burns, a lady called Anne Burns, her research shows that high level oracy, that's easier than to attain literacy acquisition. So oracy meaning speaking.
Yep.
Yep. Any questions so far? No. It is much easier.
I'm good.
It is much easier when the words are already known. Words are known in their oral form. So learning to read and write in L1 is a matter of learning the visual representation of words and phrases when they already know the whole meaning. Learning to read and write for the first time in L2 is more complicated by the fact that the learner also is just getting to know the meaning of the words they're encountering on print. So if they see the word for the first time and they can't link it with a meaning, it's harder for them. But if you already know the meaning, you have the oracy there, then you're more likely to be able to pick it up. With those who have a low literacy background, teach them words of things they already know. Okay, for example, and they know maybe brother, sister, all those sort of words. They can relate it if you have a picture, family tree. They talk about the present living situation, things like that. Talk about today's topics such as food, shopping, health. If they already know the words they are learning to read and write, then there is one less learning step along the way, and adding a new language to the existing knowledge is a relatively simple matter. Yeah. So we don't just teach them a word randomly, we've got to link it, show them.
Mm-hmm.
We do that form. So you teach them the form, so whether it's an adverb, adjective, noun, you teach them the pronunciation, and then you teach them to put it in a sentence. I think it's something like you do the meaning first, then the form, then the pronunciation or the IPA if they know it, and then you have them put that word in a sentence. That's how they recommend you teach vocab. Elicit the meaning from them, don't tell it. And in the end, have them put that word in a sentence. Okay, so many ESL learners come from a background where there are cultures with strong traditions in oral storytelling, where stories are told and retold and passed down from one generation to another. It makes sense to use narratives and recounts as core texts in the process of learning to read. Can you think of any backgrounds, cultures that have a background of telling stories where it's not written down, it's only orally passed on? Can anyone think of?
Maybe Greeks.
Yeah, the Greeks, yeah. In Australia?
The ancient time.
The indigenous people.
Aboriginals?
Yes, that's right. Definitely true for them. So it makes sense if they're used to those narratives. So we tell them stories as well. If you're teaching English here in Australia, it's good to include the Indigenous culture as well. Stories can be used to introduce many other kinds of texts. Example, a story about a visit to a doctor. So you have the vocab and phrases relevant to that situation. Can provide a springboard to look at other texts such as prescriptions and how to take medicine, depending on the level you adapt it. So learners who have little or no first language literacy might be a bit weak in picking up without the realia or the video clips or mining, which is acting it out. They have to use some logic when they're doing the role plays as to what happens. Any questions? No?
Not yet.
No. Next one, I've written this in Comic Sans because Comic Sans is the recommended font style for writing for elementary or beginner learners because it's the closest to the Victorian script we use here. So I know like you can have an A like this, for example, but how we teach in our school is we do A like this, you know, a normal A, not that A. So things like that. In Australian schools, we use the Victorian script, and the Victorian script most closely resembles the Comic Sans. Oopsie, it's not meant to be disability, it's meant to be 18. I didn't double check this, I should have. So at font size 18. I have to go back and check this later because I dictated it, so sometimes it doesn't come out properly. Yeah, so for a beginner class, use Comic Sans at size 18. The following exercises are examples of some activities that are useful for developing character recognition. So character meaning ABC, as well as discriminating between the letters that are quite similar. Can anyone think of some letters that are similar in English?
I and L.
Yeah, that's right. So, well, if you said like A and E, like that, like if you do that sort of A and E, they're quite similar, like the other A. But ones that are similar In the book, it mentions B, D, P, Q. I know you can do Q like that, but some people do Qs like this. Like, it's confusing.
Yeah.
If you just did a Q with that little tag at the bottom, it looks a bit like the P, but inversed. If you have dyslexia, maybe it's confusing. Don't you agree? The B and the D and the P and Q, because they're the opposite of each other.
And the G and the Q.
Yeah, that's right. G's got the little loop at the bottom, but if you don't have much of the loop, it is confusing. G and P.
Yep.
Might be the same with M and W.
Ah, yes, M and W, because upside down. If you had the M and W, yeah. If you made the W upside down, it's an M with that little stick. And how to write it as well. So we always say you start at the top and you go down, and you would go from the left to the right. That's something to teach as well, that we start here and we go across. Arabic, with Japanese you go down, Chinese too. Arabic you go the opposite way, don't you? Right from left. So we're teaching them always start at the top and go down. So we start from this side and we go across. So all our letters, they have to write in such a way that you start at the top and you continue it. So some people do A's like this. So which is the correct way to do an A or a D, for example? Do you have the circle and the line, or do you have it actually a fluid motion? I don't know if you guys can see. Can you see the circle and the one line?
How you?
So some people do A's, just a circle and one line. Here, I'll show you on the whiteboard.
I do a circle on one line.
Yeah. I know. So I have seen this where you just go the circle and then a line like that, or preferably a bit closer like that as an A. Should we do an A like that or not? Well, how it's taught in Victorian schools.
Confusing.
Yeah, because it could be like a,
with the O.
yeah, it could be OL if you don't have it close enough.
Yeah.
I have seen like a D just like this. And yes, I understand the D entails a circle and a line. I understand that. Even a bit closer, it looks a bit better. But it should be that you start here in the middle and you go around, then you go up, and then you continue because you're learning to do cursive. So if you see students doing just a circle, like for B, for example, they might do a circle and a line, try and get them not to do it. Okay? So a circle and line business, no. Because when we're writing it, we want it all connected. We do B's like that anyway, and the D like that, and the E. So do you write similar to that, everyone?
Like manuscript?
Yeah, your script in your country, how you've learned to write English, because some people do R's like this, you know, some people do R's like this. We do R's like this way in Victoria, but I know like the French, for example, do R's like this. So we'll talk more about it when we do writing, but there's the Victorian script, and that's what we use when we teach writing. So the reading also should be the Victorian script, and as mentioned here, Victorian script, but in the Comic Sans font at 18, size 18. Any questions about that? So this is basically talking about the exercises. So these are the exercises straight from your book. So A, which one is A? This one. Which one is B? That one. Which is H? That one. So just recognizing the same. So we start off simple exercises and they get a bit more complicated. Then you can do uppercase and lowercase. What do we call uppercase? What's the other word for that?
Lowercase.
Yeah, uppercase and lowercase. So if I say, please write in uppercase, you could say in block letters. What's the other word?
The caps lock?
Yeah, that's right. Oh, caps lock, yeah, but capitals, yes, write in capitals. It's confusing because teachers might say, you have to write in block letters. Okay. And the next teacher might say, you have to write in capitals. So if you're filling out a form, sometimes they say block letters or capitals. Yeah, that means put the caps lock down. But recognizing, and I know there are some fonts, like I have gone out. So what's wrong with this sentence? You can see it. Can you see that one saying, I have gone out? Maybe I should write it on the whiteboard. So I have gone out. Can you see that?
Can't see, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Can anyone see it at all?
Yeah, there is an A in
Yeah,
uppercase.
yes. I don't know. Seems like South Americans, they put that A in there. And some people do it just to be a bit rebellious or something. But basically, that capital A we can't have in there. So have, there's no need for capitals. Just write H-A-V-E in lowercase.
Yeah.
Nacho, why do some South Americans put capitals in?
Because of in South America we have manuscript and also we have the block letter. So we usually use block letter because it's easier to understand or writing.
Okay,
Because in South
anyway.
American writing is really messy, so you cannot read it actually.
Okay, so because the capital is a bit clearer. Okay, now I understand. But if you're writing on the board as a teacher and if you write, I have gone out, and you put the A for have in capital A, no, cannot do that. Have to use the small lowercase and use the Victorian script, which is what I showed you. Good. Because they're talking about levels of literacy. This is basically the levels. So entry level, ages 5 to 7. That's for a child. So I'll put this, I already sent last night. I'll fix a few little typos I've got as well and put this on WhatsApp. But you can see, so if they're a low level, so imagine a child between 5 and 7, that's the sort of thing you'd be doing. You can have a look at this later. Yeah, this is the closest I could get to incorrect sort of font because the A has that slanty thing on there. I couldn't find the other sort of weird font that has capitals and lowercase all mixed in together. So basically, the use of correct lowercase or uppercase is important, is what they're saying here. Also straight from your book. Okay. Next little bit is about graphophones and phonographics. I need to get my whiteboard maybe. Okay, just a moment. If you know Latin, you know graph means what? Is it a spoken word or a picture? Graph.
Graphs are the picture.
Yeah, the pictures. Yeah, and the phon or phono. Anyone know Latin again? Does phon? Yep, it's a sound. So basically saying you can teach first of all with the picture and then go to the sound, or go to the sound, then to the picture. So graph would mean the word and the picture. So graph phonics means, first of all, so that is, graph would mean, so the actual picture and then the sound. And then the other way around, when you have the phonographics, it means you have the sound first and then the picture. So graphophonics, the picture then sound, and then the phonographics is the sound and picture. So if you have, if you're teaching the sound, sp-oo-oon.
That's when we start to make the literacy process in, like, especially in elementary school, when we want to teach how to write and stuff. But okay, in academics we find like a kind of trouble teaching in that way by phonic, like, which is a method of teaching, reading and spelling based upon the phonetic interpretation of a kind of ordinary spelling, which is like you can't, or you, it's up to you as a teacher, but like sometimes and somehow we don't agree, like teaching SPOON, and then we show our students that's a spoon. So some other methods, they try just to teach the universal way, like show the entire word spoon and show what that it represents. But it
Yeah.
depends how
So
you want
saying,
to.
so the universal way is more having the picture first. So have the graphophonics as opposed to phonographics. So I don't know if there's a right or wrong way, but if you're doing the phonographics, phono meaning sound, so you'd say we're doing ooh sounds today, ooh. Can you think of some ooh words? They might say spoon. And there's such sites on the internet where you can see how you have your tone of the noise. So sp is a short one, and then this is explosive, or the plosive they call it, the p, so it goes up and down like that, and then ooh, it's a long one, and spoon. So the phoneme, the sound, the grapheme is the actual A, B, C, and the letters, spoon. But, yeah, well, I tend to do what Nelson's saying as a universal way, so we do the picture first, so we might bring in a spoon. Can anyone guess what this is? Yes, it's a spoon. Yeah. So this one here, this another something or other I found from the internet. So it's got graphophonics. It doesn't. I couldn't find much on phonographics. So basically, graphophonics meaning. So you introduce with the picture or the realia, and then you have the sound after. So knowledge of sounds, letters, and the semantic, the background. So spoon. Suppose you could say spork. There's similar words like a fork and a spoon together. You could bring in a spork. Semantic background is the words behind it to make the word the meaning behind it. Anyone know what a spork is? Everyone ever used a spork? A spork is a cross between a fork and a spoon.
Okay.
So in that case, you could
Like
say
more.
semantic. Yeah, it's a curved looking. So it looks like that. So it's curved like a spoon is. Can you see my picture? It's got little pointy ends like a fork, but it's also curved. It's quite handy, useful for a child learning to eat, having a spork, because you can poke in and they can also scoop up, therefore they can eat easily. If you're doing the phono way, you'd have like, okay, we're doing A sounds today. Can anyone think of some A sounds? Steak, cake. And then you might go into, well, actually you can have EA for A, and you can have A consonant E. Anyone else got any comments? Well, might set this for homework. You know, what are some platforms you can teach the sound spelling relationship? Okay, next page. Okay, so developing awareness of sound spelling relationships. Use very simple words with short vowels. So we did cat, fat, bat, sat, rat, tat, for example. 8 words. I don't know if there could be more than 8 here. 9 consonants. So you got the k and the t, the f and the t, da, da, da. So you're introducing the sound. So in elementary, is the main thing you're teaching, but then by way of that, the consonants also. The k, t, f. There's always a t at the end, but the other ones at the start are different. And once they've learnt that, what can we go on after cat, sat, bat, rat? Slightly more difficult, you might say the et or the it. And you might move on to the ith and the ish and the ich. So gradually introduce more complex sounds with the diphthongs with, you know, you can have like, see how various, you don't want to say the word, a rude word would go here, but itch. If you go at and then the et and the it and the so forth, and then you get a couple of consonants thrown in together with a vowel. Okay, so in these cases, since we haven't yet developed a framework for explaining the more intricate spelling rules or connections, so if you have really difficult words, this is basically saying when students start, they've got to fill out their application form. That might be a bit complex because they haven't learnt the spelling rules. So they just have to learn that that word means this. So you can give them little hints like PH can also mean, what sound does a PH make? If you have a PH, some people might say, oh, I have to write using the alpha
sound.
Yeah, that's right. You can have tell them little hints like that. And there's 3 ways to make the k sound. Who knows the 3 ways to make k? You can say k can be K, CK, or Q, or k, k, k. In English, we talk about the bossy E. So what's the bossy E? Anyone know the bossy E? Another spelling rule.
That's when the word finishes in E and it has only 2 syllables, so it's going to call the name of the previous vowel, is it?
Yeah, so you just have this as the vowel has the sound, so a, I, o, u, or a, e, I, o, u. That sound is just the sound of the alphabet, but it becomes the actual name of it. So the bossy E makes the O into the name of the O, which is O. So not becomes note. Yeah, I just say bossy E makes the vowel sound becomes the name. So A, E, I, O, U. Yeah, but before, if it hasn't got the bossy E, it says A, E, I, O, U. You could teach them about the bossy E. We're just saying for elementary class, you might come across words, of course, when they're filling in their application form and whatnot, like this, like marital status. These ones we can't break down, we can't decode easily. You could say about the bossy E here, so that's num, but the bossy E makes it name. For the sound, but A for the name, the actual, well, the name of the letter A.
Same with work and home.
Yeah, work and home also quite difficult. But you could say OR and ER, AR, all sounds. Home, but you could say hom, but once the bossy E is there, the O becomes O. And you could teach them that shon. What's the other way to make the shon sound? There's 2 ways to say shon in English. Yeah, so that one, S-I-O-N. Yeah. If they know another word with the shon, like occasion, yeah, you can say, well, that's right, the shon.
So we can say the bossy is not always bossy. Most of the times.
And what about this? Why is it just tell? What does the tell mean?
Telephone.
Yeah, that's right. So I guess you have to teach them about abbreviations. So it's an abbreviation. Tel means telephone. How could you explain the word abbreviation?
Short way of writing or saying.
If you abbreviate a word, what do you do?
Huge.
Yeah, make it shorter.
Contracted.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, you say it's a contraction. Well, I don't know if you say it has been shortened. Telephone is tell. So the elementary people, they'll have to fill out a form. They'll need some help. Maybe they might do it in your class. Yeah, so what topics to talk about? Well, we're doing reading for elementary, so we just have easy things like that. So say it with the actual cards, or the realia, so they can link it with a meaning. Okay. They need to be able to visually recognize it with its meaning. So we can introduce some items with the actual realia or the pictures there, and then we have a matching exercise. Then we have maybe unscrambling exercise where they've got to unscramble the words, and then maybe put in a sentence. And in the end, we want them to be able to use the word. in a freer activity without any help. Yeah. Okay, so next section is authentic material. Danny, can you read this one? Hopefully no typos. Is Danny here? Because Danny did authentic for his thesis. Can you read that one? We live in a highly literate...
Authentic or adapted real life text. So we live in a highly... What's that?
Literate.
Literate.
Showing it? Wait.
Society. You've probably got the same problem as me. It's always... You guys are in the way. I've got to fiddle things around to how to read it. Yeah, it's hard, you know, using technology to teach, especially when you've got little things flashing up. Bombarded with print. Yeah. Everyone knows what bombarded means. Does that mean a little bit here and there or a whole lot boom at once? What's bombarded mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So boom, boom, boom. Although actually less these days.
Boom, boom, shell.
Yeah, bombarded like a bomb with print. I don't know. I'm actually receiving less print in my letterbox these days, but basically they're saying that there's a whole lot of print material we can use. Yeah, so there's newspapers. You get the local newspaper delivered where you live?
No.
Need to chuck some commas in here. I'll fix all these little typos before I put it up. So newspapers, supermarket catalogues, solicitation letters, letters inviting you to do something, petitions and whatnot, community information letters, council, lawyers, or what am I saying, politicians sometimes when there's an election coming up, emails, business letters, pamphlets from schools. Usually schools are always into, you know, fundraising, this, that and the other. School fete coming up, especially if you have a child, you get lots of that sort of stuff. And the bills and the terms and conditions involved, billboards, you know, when you're driving down the freeway, advertisements, internet-based, those pop-up ads. So lots of, well, pop-up ads, those ones are not actually in your hand, realia, that's on the net, but all the rest, billboards, no. But yeah, these ones up here, you can actually easily take to school if you're teaching and use. It's fairly repetitive because it's saying, the same as before, we need to make it purposeful and meaningful to the learner's daily life, build students' interest and motivation, help learners to see everyday reading material as accessible to some degree, even if they can't understand every word, and accept that they don't have to understand every word to be able to make use of the text. They're more likely to engage with it if they feel they can get something out of it. So I was just going to show you, did I put, yes I did. So newspapers we get delivered. I'm in the Port Phillip area, but I think every area, it's this site. It's a digital edition. You go there and you can go through your local newspaper.
Yeah.
You can be a bit sneaky and take out of people's letterbox. People usually don't read it anyway, actually.
That's a real authentic material for...
Yeah, but if you have a few of them, you know, hand them out. Like I'd ask my neighbour, you don't want, you know, you've read it, haven't you? And then I collect a few in and have them share in groups, and then you can put it up as well. So you've got the digitalised version, so it's easy to read. So if, while they're reading this article, you can have it up on the screen as well. So that's handy. So the local newspapers you can get on the digital. You just put it in the newspaper in digital edition and it'll come up. It's got a classified section too. So if you're looking for jobs, yeah, you can check out that back page of the local newspaper. It's got all the jobs there. Yeah, so this bit here up to now. So sometimes there's spelling mistakes as well. So if you want to rely on Realia, it could be a bit of a hit and miss like this one. I don't know why people are dropping the apostrophes more and more. What's wrong with that? Let's go, let us go. Should there be an apostrophe?
Yeah, between T and S.
Yeah, but I don't know if people are doing it because they're being rebellious and making a statement saying, I don't care about apostrophes. I'm not really sure.
So maybe in a long run, that's going to disappear in English.
Yeah, maybe. So, for example, you get this as well. Even prestigious schools in Australia, you have, which one should it be? girls college, we have the S and then the apostrophe, or girl apostrophe S college. Which is correct?
Girls apostrophe.
Yeah, that
S.
one. Yeah, this one, because it's plural. But you do see written in newspapers quite often, girl apostrophe S, which is incorrect. A better America. There's also, it's just examples. People have printed and worn T-shirts where it's spelled incorrectly. This was actually in Kmart, school supplies. What's wrong with the supplies?
It's double P.
Yeah, they're meant to be 2 P's there. So sometimes it's flawed. Be careful when you use authentic material. Yeah. And junk mail. We've talked about that before. You get junk mail. Use the junk mail and use your local newsletter, because why do you think that'd be a good thing? If you're teaching in a community centre, for example, and you get the local newsletter up on your overhead projector with a couple of copies for them to look at, what else is good about doing that?
You're introducing them to the world of they are going to be.
Yeah, that's right. So introducing the local culture and things that are happening. So then the learners will feel more involved. Oh, so I didn't know there was a car boot sale at the park on a Sunday every month. Oh, can go there and buy some things, or the local family picnic for people who have various disabilities or whatever. There's lots of things happening in the community that people don't realise. Do you guys read your local newsletter?
Sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, you should. Okay, next is 2.2, straight out of your book again, so you can read that. This is talking about, so if you had Somalian housewives, once again, what to do. So if they're housewives, they have children. So what sort of thing would we spend time to improve their English if they're Somalian housewives with children? They don't want to get a job. Yeah, they've got children. They've got no interest in working. They want to stay home and look after their children. Maybe they have lots of children.
Maybe using vocabulary with that she was using as a housewife.
Yeah, that's
like,
right. Yeah.
Things with the kitchen or recipes
Yeah,
or activities that she does with her kids.
yeah, like how to use a bar mix machine, how to use a microwave, that sort of instructions, yes.
Mm-hmm.
What else? What other things might they want some help with? They're housewives, they have 10 children.
They need to go to the supermarket, so.
Yeah, that's right. Understanding receipts. You know how you get like the Coles discount thing where you can go to petrol station? Maybe that's a good thing to explain as well. Well, what else could we help them with?
How to inform any health issues of the kids to the doctor, for example?
Yeah, that's right. Yes, the system here, we have bulk billing doctors and normal doctors where you've got to pay more.
Mm-hmm.
Bulk billing ones, sometimes they don't spend so much time with you, something like 30-minute limit. And have to go to Medicare. So if they've become permanent citizens, they've got PR, then they've got a Medicare card. Then we go to what's that place called? It's not. Yeah,
Link?
No, I never go there. You go to, it's where you get all your money back for that sort of stuff.
Insurance.
Yeah, it's like that, but for Australians. Well, a Medicare office, you call it.
Centrelink?
No.
No.
Well, maybe it's just called Medicare.
Yeah, we're
I never
not Australia,
go.
so that's
It must just be Medicare. I suppose it's called Medicare. It's a Medicare place where you go. It's like Centrelink, but if you've got a medical issue, like if you've got a whole lot of receipts and you want to get reimbursed for money you spent, you go there. I think it's just a Medicare office. There you go. Teach them about that. I think these days it's all online. I haven't been for a very, very long time. I don't know if they even exist, but there was back in the good old days. Maybe there's a couple of them, one in the city. I know. You go to a Medicare. organisation, and then if you've got any questions about how the health system works, they'll explain that. So you could go to Medicare and pick up all the various brochures explaining about bulk billing, that sort of thing. Yep, what else could we have in the way of reading material to help our Somalian housewives? Anyone else? I might randomly choose people. Some people are being quiet. Yeah, Lim?
Yes.
Yep, anything you can think to help our Somalian housewives with their reading that would engage them, because they just want to stay at home and look after their children. They've got no interest in getting a job. So what sort of things might they want to have help with?
Maybe have mother how to cook.
Yeah, cooking, recipe.
Recipes, yeah.
Yeah. Maybe using the slow cook machine. If they're out having lessons, they could turn that on, come back, and they've got a nice broth, a stew already made, things like that to help them. Yeah, so recipes would be a good idea. Yeah. Anyone else got any other ideas? How to read telephone bills and how to understand
Maybe
the school newsletters.
All this like do yourself material on recipes and I don't know.
Yeah, you could
This
maybe,
kind of,
we could make a little site, a blog, and they could all share their own recipes. Probably they'd like the Somalian style cooking with lots of lentils. But putting that into English would be interesting. Yeah, good idea, Nelson. So what about where they live? Do you think they might own a house, or are they renting? And if they're renting, what might be a problem for them?
Probably renting, yeah.
Yeah, rental agreement with all those little clauses. You've got to do such and such if you damage a property. Otherwise, you won't get your bond back. The word bond, they might not understand that.
Yeah,
if they want to borrow a book, yeah.
Library.
Yeah, that's right. So a library, that's fairly straightforward though, but now these days you can even download DVDs on using your library card. Has anyone done that? Used to be you just go into a library, borrow a book, and that was it. But these days libraries have so much more to offer. Does your library have online movies to download? Should look into it, guys, because our local library here in Port Phillip, they have movies. Yep. So, and also you can use the computers. Sometimes it might be morning. It might be like you got to book yourself a computer, depending on the library, if there's not enough of them. So, how to book yourself a computer form. I should take a picture of who's here, as I always do every morning, so I don't get in trouble. My boss tells me to do that. We have lots of people here today. I'm glad the internet's working and everyone managed to get in. There's another new person called Joy, I heard, starting this week. So she only paid her fees yesterday, so we'll have another person called Joy next week. Yeah. Okay, so we can do all those sort of things to help the Somalian housewives. Oopsie, it's moving by itself. I had to get rid of that. Anyone else got anything else that you suggest? No? So if you had university aspiring students in a high school in China, for example, you're teaching high school students, they all want to go on to university, what kind of reading material would we offer them? They're all itching to get into university, to get degrees.
The advantage and disadvantages of going to university?
Yeah, that's right. You could talk about, yeah, that sort of thing, like some of the problems they might have, they might encounter. And you could, yeah, practice tests like university entry tests, do lots of them. In China, they have that. Here in Australia, we don't. We just have the ATAR score. You guys understand the ATAR score? We have VCE or HSE, VCE for Victoria. So the score you get in high school, that is the ATAR. But in China, Japan, universities, they have their own entry-level test. So yeah, we could practice that. That's a good idea. What else could we do?
Maybe give them some brochures.
Yeah, brochures about universities. Yeah. Yeah, teach them what the word campus means, because it might be various campuses, even overseas. And the faculties, what's the word faculty? Department. And give them lots of academic material to study to get them used to talking using the passive, not using the subject I when they write essays and whatnot. If they want to do hospitality, teach them more along those lines at university and so forth. Yeah, good. Okay, no one's got any more questions because we'll move on then. So, adapting your materials for different levels. So if you have a newspaper, you can make it easier or harder depending. I'll just grab mine just a moment. I just happen to have a newspaper here. So what could we do for elementary level with a newspaper? Anyone?
First of all, we can adapt the material because when we talk about using authentic materials for teaching, it depends, first of all, on the student's level. So it's the first point we need to look into. Like, if you want to use, for example, a newspaper for elementary student, we need first adapt. With them, we just can use, could be pictures, specific sentences, short paragraphs, maybe easy graph or something.
Yeah, that's right, Daniela.
You can also deconstruct the lead of the notice, the header. You can show them and ask them what they think it may mean, and then start to reconstruct it, you know, the slangs, the different words that they use.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, you could look at the picture with the headline and try and work out what it means. Yeah, good, Nacho. Yeah. Yeah. Or you can cut out the pictures, like this is a lady with a dog. Can you see the lady holding a dog?
Yes.
And then you have the headline down below. The headline says, Lessons in Leadership for Dog Owners. So you can have all the pictures here and the headline article over here and match them.
And we can make them predict what the headline is going to talk about. Or
Yeah. So Brave New World for report card, saying about students, Brave New World. So why is it brave? So for pre-level, so the students are brave. Why are they brave? Because they've got to go it alone doing homeschooling. Maybe their parents can help, maybe they can't. And why is it a new world? You can ask all these questions. So concept checking. So why do we call homeschooling a new world? It's not actually a new world. It's not a new earth. It's just a new concept of homeschooling. We haven't had that in Victoria before. Yeah.
homeschooling?
Yeah, well, the students have to homeschool. So they say on Monday they'll decide in Victoria what's going to happen. But for the time being, my daughter loves it. She doesn't mind.
Actually, some families around the world, they are adopting this kind of approach for teaching their children because they don't want, sometimes they socialize with schools or the society in the whole. You know what I mean? It's like some families, especially maybe Western families, they don't want their children socialize with people. They just educate their children in their own home. So I don't know if it really works in the way we see our society like.
Yeah, well, homeschooling was getting more popular anyway without this corona. Maybe here on in it might become even more popular. I don't know. In America, I think it's quite popular too. It depends on the child. But yes, as long as you have the social input, like you're saying, that's important. Yeah. Well, you can have one-on-one still. Maybe from Monday it will change, but it's still in Victoria. We're still shut down number 3. Yeah, say again.
Especially for the genius students, special talent
Yeah.
students.
If you're gifted, I think
Better
homeschooling works better.
study the homeschool
Yeah,
rather than the public school or Christian school.
yeah, I think so too. Yes, because then you can go on ahead. I know there's stories of 12-year-olds at universities because they were homeschooled.
That's actually Chile work like that. Like students usually go to the school, and after the school, they have teachers in their home to, you know, work harder and go on the things they are seeing in the school, like tutors.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, getting back to newspapers. So if you had a crossword puzzle, there's the cryptic one, which is a bit more difficult, and a normal one. So which level class would you say, okay, we're going to try and do a crossword puzzle? Does that be elementary level or higher?
Elementary.
No higher.
If you go higher. Even I have trouble with that. It wouldn't be elementary. You have the answers
But
the
it
next day.
depends the topic and it depends the vocab you are gonna work in.
Yeah, but I guess it's not topical though. It's all over the
Yeah.
place. But you have the answers, but that's yesterday's answers here. See, so you have to get the Herald Sun a couple of days in a row. And you have the classified.
Those
That's
with
on a
high
Saturday.
newspaper are really difficult.
Quick
Yeah,
question,
I find them really hard.
Donna.
Yeah, sure.
Do newspapers? I actually have never read a whole newspaper here in Australia ever since I came. Do newspapers in here still have the comic strip section?
Herald Sun does. Yes, I'll try and find it.
Because if they do, that's a must for an elementary school, because it has pretty much everything, right? It has the reading component, but also it has the visual aid to help the students understand better, like the context in which the words are being used, and also has like the oral speech component, because most of the times comic strips have this very basic use of language that is pretty close to the language that most of the people uses in their everyday life.
But usually when you see comics, you see also many slangs and many constructions, many phrasal verbs.
Well,
To
maybe
make
there
it
is
more catchy.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. I'm looking. I can't find a comic in this one. They have the TV guide, which can be handy for you can copy it and just get the digitalized version. It's easier. Working times, days, practicing that sort of thing. And it's got the weather. Weather's always good for predictions. And there is a quiz here, the super quiz and the easier quiz, once again for entry level. Yeah, and then the editorial section. This is looking at, so downloading the app, but then of course Google and Amazon, Yahoo, Facebook, they're already spying on us anyway. So why are people worried about downloading the COVID app? Because we're already being spied on as it is. So the editorial, that's a good, what level would you use the editorial? Editorial is a knowledgeable person's opinion about things that are happening, usually with the government, topical things. So an editorial section. So who would use it?
After advanced, yeah.
Yeah, so probably more upper, right, or advanced. Look at the editorial section. It's analysing things that are happening, current affairs.
Yeah, even
and you got the
student must be able to discuss and suggest.
Yeah, so at an upper level, where you got the higher level thinking, you could have them give their opinion. You could read the editorial and read the question and answer section where people submit their own letters giving their opinion and have them write an essay. But that's lots of different areas where you can use the newspapers. So one newspaper. But then you have to buy the Herald Sun subscription or the Age. Which one is easier, by the way, the Herald Sun or the Age? Because in Melbourne, really, there's only two. There's the Australian, which is all of Australia. But for Melbourne, we have the Herald Sun and the Age. Which is easier? Anyone know?
I don't know which is it.
Is the Australian video?
Oh, the Australian. Well, that's about Australia. So for Victoria, if you want to teach them about what's happening more so here, there's only 2 newspapers. You've got the Age or the Herald Sun. But which one is written in a slightly easier, well, more tabloidy, more sort of shock horror? Yeah, the Herald Sun. So this is easier English, this one up here, the Herald Sun. The Age is a bit more deep, complex, slightly harder English. So the Herald Sun's easier. But it is written by the Murdoch press, and the Murdoch people tend to be very right-winged. So they're pro-Trump and pro-Scott Morrison, so you have to be mindful of that. Whereas the Age is more left. So if you're reading the Age, you're probably more pro-Labor.
Which one is right-wing and which one is
That's
left?
right. Herald Sun is right because owned by Murdoch. And Murdoch, they try to sway the world to consume coal, continue on our capitalistic path of destruction, in my opinion. So I like the Age.
Murdoch,
I like the Herald Sun.
Donna, is Murdoch supporting a Morrison Liberal Party?
Yes, he is. Well, it's called the Coalition because it's Liberal and the National Party together. The Coalition. Yeah. Because Liberals, they couldn't form government without the Nationals. Nationals are the farmers and Liberals are the employers, the bosses. So the employers and the farmers rule Australia at the moment.
And the Age is the Age newspaper.
Yeah.
Is supporting Labor.
Well, more so, it's supporting more of a national centralist government, which I think we'll have to move back to after Corona. Yeah. But anyway, I'm being recorded, so I can't say anything too political. I'll get in trouble. So move on. Lose my job if my boss likes Liberal and I like Labor. Anyway, this is in your book as well. A complex article, we need to be able to, as teachers, put it into easier English. That's in your textbook. It's called paraphrasing. You get the information, you understand it, and you rewrite it. So we have to do that. So if we're doing a topic you find interesting, then all of these little complex words in here, pull them out, make it the target vocab, and put it into easier English for them. Okay, next is number 3, which is reading for social purposes, task, texts, and strategies. So when we read a novel, it's different to when we read a website. Can anyone tell me why?
Novel is a literature and using a lot of, imagination. Or
yeah, so you do it, is it for pleasure or for work, reading a novel?
For pleasure.
That's right, yeah. Yeah. And probably, would you skim it, scan it, or would you read it properly?
That's also the way of the speech. Usually...
I normally skim and scan.
Tina, you meant to say read properly.
Okay.
Yeah, you're supposed to read them properly, but...
Yeah, or scanning is not a proper reading process.
If you've got a book you really like, you go to the bookshop and you buy it, you're meant to actually read it properly. If your teacher has told you, you have to read this, it's Shakespeare and you're not into Shakespeare, maybe you might skim it, but still.
Yeah.
And websites, we do this thing where we just pull out what we want, what we're interested in. We sort of skim and scam it and we take out what we want. We don't read the whole lot, do we, of a website? It takes too much time. Just click on the appropriate tabs. Whereas a novel, we're more likely to read from the first page to the last page. So there's different types of reading. Reading for specific purposes, reading for details, reading just for gist, reading for pleasure. So each reading task mentioned involves quite different reading strategies, which match the purpose for which we are reading. The teacher's task is to highlight the different meeting strategies, should be reading strategies for different texts or tasks. Learners from different literacy backgrounds will particularly benefit from this training. Often when learning a second language, people want to understand everything. Okay, so what's the problem with understanding everything that's on the page? What?
That actually you don't need to understand everything or every single word. If you just catch the meaning or the entire details that they want to tell you is enough. Like that's something that we need to make clear with our students. They don't need to understand every single word, but they need to understand just the general context of what they're talking about.
That's right, yes. Otherwise, it will take too long and take their attention away from the main gist of what has been spoken, what is in the book. They lose sight of the purpose of the text and the author's reason for writing it. So, as a teacher, you have to decide whether you let them use electronic dictionaries or not. So you can say, okay, we're looking for specific details, so yes, you can use for this reading task, but this time we're just doing for overall meaning behind, so therefore no electronic dictionaries. Or best, what do you think? To ask the teacher or pull out your dictionary? Or your online phone and look at Google Translate? What's better, to ask the teacher?
I am absolutely pro dictionary. That's
not teacher, but if the teacher is bilingual, what do you think?
Yeah, but nonetheless, the teacher is not a walking dictionary, and sometimes we just don't know the correct use of the word in that specific context, or we just don't know the word straight away. You see?
Can put it in your
notebook. So I am absolutely pro dictionary.
But if they don't have time and the teacher's going on to the next task, then maybe the students can look it up later. Get a quick and easy response from the teacher, maybe talk to other people who know in the class who can translate it. But if you look in dictionary, it might take too much time. So I think it depends, Nelson. If you want more detail later, the stress, which part of the syllable is stressed, and the IPA, look in the dictionary certainly. But then if the teacher's moving on, I don't know how quickly you can look up.
Yeah, it depends on the purpose you have.
It depends on the level, I think, because you need to be up to answer the question of the students in lower levels, especially because usually they have the same question. So if one raises their hand and say, hey teacher, what does it mean? And you answer loudly and write it in the whiteboard, many of the other students will be able to see it as well.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, yeah, probably they've all got the same question. And you should have predicted that in your lesson plan and already have it there. If you've got predominantly Spanish and, for example, Chinese speakers, you could put on your overhead projector already the translated words. You sort of know, oh, they're going to ask me this. You can Google Translate it, although it might be wrong because Google Translate's not always 100% correct.
Okay, I think that it may depend on. I mean, I agree that it depends on what kind of exercise or what is your specific purpose with the reading activity, right? If you're just skimming, reading some paragraph to have like a discussion, then it will be faster for the purpose of the class, for the teacher just to give them the specific answer and that's it. But if it is like a comprehensive reading exercise, I still stand on my ground of the use of the dictionary. Now, what I always recommend to my students, both in English and in Spanish, I mean English as a second language and Spanish as a second language, is to avoid Google Translator as the corona. You have to avoid it as much as possible because Google Translator is not going to give you like a contextual translation or a very wide translation of the word that you're looking for. Whereas some other tools, for example, like the Word Reference Dictionary or Lingy or what's the other one? Reverso. And that Reverso context, they are going to give you a more a wider use of that specific word in several different contexts with the source of the document. So you are actually going to learn not only that meaning in that specific context of the word, but in different scenarios. And that simple exercise of the student typing down on his or her text cell phone and looking for the word is going to create a connection and make them remember the answer or the translation or whatever it is, the use of that word better as if we as teachers just tell them like, oh, what is the meaning of whatever word, and we just deliver the answer, and that's it.
Yeah.
It may help them to understand in the moment, but it's not going to be like a comprehensive learning.
Yeah, good. Yeah, I agree. That word reference, I think it has the IPA, but Reverso doesn't. But Reverso's not in all languages. So if you look up one little like lave, elle a lavé la main, I put in French the other day, it came up in English with all these other similar sentences. Can everyone see? So word reference does the same. Everyone know word reference? You can download it on your phone. Has everyone got that downloaded?
Pretty useful, isn't it?
Pretty useful. Yeah.
Yeah, so that one, word reference, is application, WR. Yeah, so it'll bring up the word in context, so whatever word you're looking for. Yeah. And it's got English too. That's the problem though, because sometimes it doesn't have, like, it has English to Spanish, English to French, the main languages, but not every language. And same with the Reverso. Like Reverso doesn't go to Japanese or Chinese. So the Asian students out there won't know about Reverso. You and I do, because I'm studying French. You speak Spanish, Portuguese. Anyone who is Asian know about Reverso? No, maybe not, because they don't do the Asian languages. Anyway, so you can go for word reference. It does have the section where you can have it translated, but it's mostly all the Latin languages. Yeah, I don't know why that is. They should make Reverso and word reference translate into all languages, really. Okay, don't use Google Translate.
Yep. Just one more thing.
Yeah,
I'm going to paste a website for a different, similar dictionary than Reverso with a wider, languages list.
Okay.
I'm just looking for the chat. It's
yeah,
just
sure.
in the chat.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Linky. Yeah.
Yeah, it'd be great.
Linky, I have used that a lot lately for my translation tasks.
Ah, okay.
For my translating tasks, and it's really good because it also gives you the use of the word in context. And this Linky has like more academic uses. It means it's going to give you the document and the source of the document for the specific translation, mostly taken from more academic or more formal documents.
Right, okay, great. Yep, thank you for that. Good.
Sure, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Nelson.
Donna, I just found out there's one, translation app, Xunfei app, which is very beautiful, translating about 6 languages from, English, Chinese, Japanese, maybe, Spanish, and the rate of the right translation will be probably, more than 95%.
Wow, that's great.
So,
okay.
Yeah, that's great. I just tried once. I found once you read any Chinese, then immediately the English version will appear on your laptop.
So there are ones, those voice translating ones, but you have to speak very clearly. Yeah, that's great. Yeah. I haven't experimented with them, but there is voice translation where you put it in and it'll come up with that whatever language you choose. Yeah. Take up a little memory in your phone. Yes?
Don't you think it might be a little bit more lot of information for like lower students? Use like really complicated translators and dictionaries?
Well, for lower level, I just say I have a basic dictionary, Macmillan's dictionary. You've got various dictionaries as well. So have a smaller ones and have them, if you're going to give them time to look up words, if you're doing, as Nelson's saying, looking for specific complex answers, reading comprehension, we've got to understand it all, then yes, give them time to look at a dictionary. but not Google Translate is what we're saying. Yeah.
No. When I was learning English, usually the teachers ask us for the meaning, so they give us the time for answer or syllabus, but they don't give us like the chance of to using the cell phone or to think in our language. We have to, if I know the meaning of my partner question, I have to explain him with my words so we can manage the same kind of language to explain the meaning of the words.
Yeah, yeah. It's probably a good idea using a paper book dictionary as opposed to, even though Reverso and whatnot has a lot of advantages, but if you have the paper one, you see all the other words as well, so you can pick up the word root, what other words are similar. So you're sort of learning, subconsciously as well when you're going through it.
Oh.
Yeah, and then once the student has found that word, putting it in their own words to explain it, it's a good idea. So I like the paper dictionaries, and a lot of international students' classrooms have those dictionaries in the corner. If not, ask the director, the DOS, the manager, so you can have a set in your classroom. I know I had in my room. Good. Any other questions, guys? Because I don't want to go too much over, because I'm recording it and it gets really big and heavy trying to transfer it across. I take too long. So we're doing 4. 4 is learning activities to develop reading strategies and skills. We're talking about decoding. So decoding is when you have a word and it's really complex, but you can break it down because you know, once again, the word root, you know the actual, all the Latin basis from which that word came. So for native English speakers, they could read this no problems at all because their brain automatically corrects the mistakes. Can you guys have a go trying to read this?
Yes,
Yeah,
sure.
according
I
to
can do it as
Wikipedia.
well.
In English university, it doesn't matter
Basically,
in
it
what
doesn't
order
matter in
the
what
letters
order
in a word
the
are.
letters are.
The only important thing
The
is that
only
the
important
first
thing is
The
that
only
it's
thing is
first and
that first
And
and
in the
last.
right place. The
right
rest can be a
places.
total mess.
The rest can be a total mess,
right.
and you can still read it without a
You
problem.
can read,
No problem.
you know, read every letter in
This is
it.
because we do not read every letter by itself,
Yeah.
but the word as a whole.
But the word as a whole.
Okay. That is true. Like it's got the U and the Y, so I can sort of figure, oh yeah, university. And in the context, we're talking about English research, yes. So that's what happens. That's not really decoding. Well, maybe it is. Let's see. Well, I look at decoding as the actual word and breaking it down. You don't see things written like this, so that's not really a good example. But it shows how the brain does correct the word. But if you have the word like anti-disestablishmentarianism, okay, so that's the longest word in the English dictionary. So if you know,
I remember last time you were teaching us one of the theory, a professor in America. The professor name is Chomsky or something.
yes, Chomsky. Yes.
Chomsky.
Theory is that all knowledge of language can be from the baby or from the born. So
The need
decoding,
to know.
Decoding is very mystery. We, according to his theory, the professor's theory, so we just understand the language or decoding any of the text or oral language by a mystery way. Do you agree?
Well, that we can decode. Once we know, like the word establish, we can work out that the anti-prefix means against and dis means no, and ism makes it into a noun, that sort of thing. But the innate want and need to communicate, that's what Chomsky is saying, that we're all born with this, that all languages have nouns and verbs and adverbs and things like that. But as a mystery, well, you might, it depends how curious you are about learning the language. If you find it, for me, I find it interesting breaking words apart like this. Do you guys feel the same way? If you get a long word like this, you can sort of figure it out because you know various meanings of the suffixes and prefixes. You feel the same way?
Yeah, but in this case, wouldn't be like a double negative?
Well, anti-disestablishmentarianism.
Because
So
anti is gone, is against. This is non. So anti and non, it wouldn't be like a positive then?
This is mathematics.
I'm sorry.
yeah, so really it's saying to be Kabbalistic, I
At the
suppose.
end, it would be establishmentary.
Yeah, I know. Well, disestablishmentarian. So this is negative and anti is, so actually they're two negative.
Anti
It
is
makes it positive.
against, yeah. This is no.
So,
For me, it does make sense. Anti disestablish, like you are against to disestablishmentary realism. What's that?
Anti-disestablishmentarism.
You have the establishmentarism, then you have the disestablishmentarism, and then you have the anti-disestablishmentarism.
So at the end, you're gonna be establishmentarism, no?
Yeah, something like that.
Well, they're pro-church.
Yeah.
They want establishmentarianism.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Exactly.
Well, they're
the contour of the
two
contour.
negative prefixes.
Yeah.
Which, right. It would be they're pro-church, so they're anti the breaking down the de-establishing of the church system. But anyway, looking at the root establish, you can work that out. And that long word, does this word actually mean anything? I don't know. Well, maybe it does. What is a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious?
These are reading that.
Oh my God. That is Mary Poppins, isn't it?
Yeah,
It's a song, yeah. But actually, here it says actually the word means fantastic. I didn't know it had any meaning. I just thought it was just a word that someone made up, but it actually means fantastic.
I mean, it's made like fantastic in a supercalifragilisticexpialidocious way.
I would like to say more fantastic.
Oh, well, that's the longest word. Anyway, so decoding strategies you can do like by looking at a picture, by looking at the vowel, how it's spelt, get your lips ready, put it in context. Does it make sense in the sentence? These are all hints for young children how to decode, how to understand a word. And looking at the suffixes like we said before. It's a basic skill and we can understand it by looking at the word, breaking it down to its different chunks and looking at the context. Yeah. This is, well, it says decoding, but actually it's if you're stuck on a word, you don't know how to understand that word, these are some things you can do. So saying it out loud, breaking it down, like actually saying it might help. If you say it, then you might realize, oh, maybe it's this word. Rereading it, so saying the word slowly, all these sort of things. Okay, next is 4.2, which is prediction. So another strategy to help them improve their reading is to, if you just give them the heading like we said before, and then work out what the article might be about, just looking at the cover of a book or the magazine photos or recipe, just look at the ingredients. What can we make from this? Yeah, so you start off in small chunks, so the top down. And this you'd have with the bottom-up way of teaching. So you just have some ingredients and work out what recipe we could make and then show them the recipe at the end. It's a bottom-up style teaching. 4.3, oh, well, there you go. Yeah, that's that. Yeah, 4.3. So top-down is when you have the theory and you go down to the chunks, specific, and then bottom-up is when you have the chunks and you go up to the theory. So having the recipe ingredients, you could bring in a zucchini, a carrot, and an onion and ask what recipe we could make. That's a bottom-up style. 4.4, using contextual clues. It's pretty repetitive, this. It's what we've talked about before. So that's the main root words, and this is the prefixes and the suffixes. So, you know, full would make it into, well, wonderful, beautiful, that's an adjective.
Noun.
Yeah, but I was going to say noun because there are nouns as well that end in full. Like, I don't know, I can't think of one right now. But meant, argue, meant. So argue, verb, meant would make that into a noun. Also, general. ED, so that could be an adjective for attractive, attracted. If you have ED, it does mean the past tense, but also an adjective. So interested, bored, able.
Like passive voice.
The passive
Hello.
voice.
Yeah.
And that could be a gerund as well. So I enjoy eating, singing. It's a gerund, so it doesn't mean an actual verb all the time. Okay, so that's basically saying what we said before. When trying to work out the meaning of an unknown word, you look at the text around it. Sometimes the sentence before or after will help as well. That's the context. And also paying attention to what the function of the word is, what it relates to, what is the root word. Okay, and other ways to improve reading is scanning. So scanning and skimming, do you remember the difference? Which one is looking for information and which one is just looking quickly?
Scanning is looking for information, isn't it?
Scanning, that's just going through quickly. I haven't got skimming here. Oh, it's got scanning again. Oh, skimming. Skimming is a general idea. You get bogged down. Okay. Yep, you're right. Scan is to find the information. That doesn't say so here.
Yeah.
Scanning. Yeah, scanning, you're right. But it doesn't say here. I copied it from the book. But scanning is to find information that you want. And to skim through is to look through quickly just to pick up the gist.
You just want to maybe look for a specific headline or a title.
Yeah.
The keywords and scan the text words and synonyms.
So if you want to scan a document, for example, the tram timetable, and I'd say if I get up at 6:30 and I need to be at work at 8 o'clock, so what trams could I catch from South Melbourne tram stop? So if you scanned that document, you'd be looking for, okay, you can have 7:05, 7:15, 7:22. So yeah, you're looking for specific information. Yeah, good. So you can also scan for, if you're looking for words that mean something, you can get them to say another word for wonderful, scan through if you're looking for synonyms. Or what's an antonym? Synonym is a similar word. So wonderful, fabulous. So what is an antonym? So what is an antonym of wonderful?
Opposite?
Yeah, that's right. So you might say terrible. Yeah, that's right. Dreadful. And homonym. So that's dying. So the same sound, but spelt differently. Okay, so scanning, more on scanning. So like, for example, tourist destinations you could do together. You can distribute copies. Welcome to Melbourne. We're going to do some excursions. So quickly look through and find 3 you want to go to. So that's scanning and finding information. Yep, good. And skimming is the other one, which is finding the gist. It's not getting bogged down, just reading lightly, but not looking for anything in particular, just the overall meaning. And reading for pleasure, which, Adina, we should do when we read books. We ought to. Yeah. You can have a story tape, CD. Like I said, from the library, you can download DVDs. And this actually is a site you can go to where it has songs with the IPA written. You know how we did IPA a few weeks ago? You guys, you didn't learn about that because you weren't around then, but there are sites on the World Wide Web where you can listen to a song with the actual lyrics written in IPA, the International Phonetic Alphabet. You can have a look at that. Yeah, like for example, this one. So Story of My Life, One Direction. So it's actually, it hasn't got Story of My Life, it actually says story, so the IPA.
The story of my life.
That's a good song. So I don't know if that, I don't know how to do.
Oh my god, I should silent
Life, how to do life. Life. So it could be something like story of my life. I'm not right. I don't know. It could be of. I don't know that of or off, because sometimes people say off or of. So it'd be written like that, story of my life, da da da. But in IPA, not in English alphabet. So if you're learning to read, yeah, not a lot of. There's something like 20 songs on that site. Have a look. Next is reading for detailed comprehension. So this is when we get the text where the dictionary is out too. So you might skim it first, and you might scan it for synonyms of certain words, but then eventually if it's for comprehension, we need to answer some questions at the end. So for example, if you have a desk from IKEA, we need to reconstruct it. It was constructed, then they disassemble it and put it into a box, and you've got to put it back together again. Well, obviously you've got to read for details. Any other things you can think we need to read for details?
Figure it out in the context.
Yeah, so contracts, that's right. Your work contract might say during Corona times you won't get paid. Oh, okay. Yes. So if you have a warranty, if you buy something and it breaks down the next day, no one ever reads them. Stupid old Apple iPhones. Have you seen the warranty for an iPhone you got to sign? Like, who reads that? It'll take you 10 days to read it. I know. Everyone just ticks it. They shouldn't. They should probably read it a bit more carefully. Okay. So reading in detail. So you could do things like read the text and write questions for your partner, and your partner answer, and then ask other partners. You can move one person goes to this group and the other to that group, that sort of thing. The last one, 4.9, is other activities, which also activities you can do to promote detailed reading. You can read all that. And then the last little bit is writing comprehension exercises using authentic texts. Yep, all the answers are within the text and do not depend on knowledge outside text. So when you're doing this, so if you want to bring in something of interest, like how to use an iPhone, how to download an application, well, you need to understand that everyone has to know what an iPhone is, what an application is. So don't, if you have this instruction guide you want to show them as a reading task, or if you've rewritten it in easier English, make sure that the questions you have are all within that text. And sequence the questions. I don't know if you'll agree with this, especially for earlier level, beginner, elementary, pre people, you put the questions in the same order as it comes up in the reading text. People get confused if you have a question related to something that's at the end. They haven't read that bit yet. Everyone agree? Should be at the level to suit their proficiency. So, and use slightly different words. So if the lady says she had a delicious meal, you can ask, did she eat a tasty meal? We don't say the same word. Include questions that will prompt them to look for the main ideas. So don't just ask what day did she wake up. You can ask how did she feel? What, how questions. Authentic materials. Danny, you know about them? Did a thesis on them?
Yes.
You can talk to us about them some other time. So having like a graph, it's authentic material. You might find it on the internet, like Corona. Like for example, well, there's 4 million people in the world that have contracted Corona, 300,000 who have died.
Yeah, that's something that we really found interesting in our research about authentic materials. And it was like we really define authentic materials when they can really help students bridge the gap, which is between the classroom and the outside world. In this case, it's pretty much useful if we really correlate that existence of the current outbreak of coronavirus with our real life. So it really becomes in a useful tool for teaching. So it could be news, even all the updates that the government does. And yeah.
Yeah, it is quite complicated with the federal saying one thing, like they brought in this 3-point step plan to get the economy back up again, but then it's not actually been implemented yet. So it's confusing. Yes, using authentic materials so students know what's happening. If you're running online classes, you'd certainly be talking about Corona right now. As Daniel Andrews on Monday, he'll give us an update, but I think he'll say we're continuing lockdown level 3 for a while.
Oh no.
Someone's saying, oh, yeah. Well, because we've had the outbreak at the Cedar Abattoir. I think Victorians are always more conservative compared to other states. We tend to be more careful down here. So critical literacy, what does that mean? Anyone know?
Analyze.
Yeah, well, you could give advice to the person who's written something to give your own opinion. So, yeah, to actually critique something is to, yeah, you could give advice to them or to the teacher why it was not as you thought it should be. Yeah, so it's actually reading and understanding and giving your opinion. So what level would that be, elementary or upper?
No, upper.
Yeah, upper. I got someone called Joy. Sorry, this person, Joy, wants to be in our class, but I'm recording it, so I'll send it to her. The new person. Oh man, this is way too much for me. I didn't put it all in. This is what every single page I tried to just get it down to the nuts and bolts. Critical literacy, it basically means that we need to critique, we understand it and we analyse it and we come forward with our own opinion about it. So for upper level, yes, you're right. And giving feedback and corrections. Yeah, so giving feedback, yes, as soon as possible after you've gone through the questions and answers. And we don't overly correct, we've spoken about this before, if their confidence is a little bit not quite there. So we ask the concept checking questions we've talked about before. So if you're talking about medicine, well, you could adapt that. If you're doing upper level, you could probably talk about a bit more than just how much to give and how often and the total amount. You could look at the actual prescription, look at the words on it, and about going back for repeats and things like that. There's other information on your prescription that you get from the doctor when you take to the chemist to get some medicine. But for an elementary class, you might just cover these bits and correct them. But you could just say, oh, not quite, if they get it wrong. Don't just say no, you know. So nearly there. So this is the finish, I think. There's nothing else? No, there's nothing else. Yay, we're done, everyone. What time is it? That's good. I've got to finish.
11.
That's good.
Good. That was good, you.
Stop slide share. And I'm recording this, so I'll just stop the recording now.